Okay, I'd like to start us off today. I'd like to welcome everybody back. Today we have Mrs. Tasha Harrison Betts, and we're going to be talking about pre-employment and transition services. And at this point, I'd like to hand it back over. Mrs. Betts, if you would introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tasha Betts. I work for Alabama Department of Rehab Services as the statewide transition coordinator. I'm happy to be here on this Facebook Live today.
And how long have you been with ADRs?
Wow, I've been with ADRs for about 15 years now. And I've been in this position for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm. And did you always know that you wanted to be involved with ADRs, or how did that journey go for you?
Well, in college, I studied psychology, and then in my master's was in community counseling, but I was introduced to the field of rehab throughout my master's level training, and I just developed a love for it. When I first got my master's, I started off in mental health, and mental health was very interesting. But as I started to research and learn more about vocational rehab, I felt that that was the fit for me. Mm-hmm. I like the counseling and the therapy, but when you can pair providing counseling and guidance and services, which is going to lead to ultimately employment, for our youth and adults with disabilities, that just means so much.
Yeah, and we had an opportunity to speak yesterday a little bit on ADRS's employment at University of Alabama and the importance of employment for individuals, anybody, and what it means to them in the long run. Now, you mentioned your undergrad and your master's there. Was that here in the state of Alabama? Are you originally from this area?
Well, I'm from Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and I received my Bachelor of Science from Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Go Jaguars. And then I continued to be a Jaguar, and I got my master's from the University of South Alabama in Mobile, Alabama.
Mm-hmm. And are you currently
also Jaguars?
Yeah, my youngest brother played at the University of South Alabama on their football team as a wide receiver. So that's always my team to go to and root for.
I hear you. They have a really nice stadium now too. It's finished.
I haven't been yet, but I've heard it's really nice.
It is beautiful. You should come to a game.
I appreciate that. And I am going to go ahead and share my screen here. And I want you guys to see this presentation that we're going to go over today. And just let me know if you can see this. And in the meantime, I'm going to pull up on my phone the Facebook Live just to make sure that everything's coming through. We had a little bit of a hiccup with our audio yesterday. And I was very fortunate that Jill West was in the comments and she notified me. She said, "Hey, your microphone is off." So I love the feedback from the chat there. And I'm just going to pull it up on the phone here. And if you could give us an overall introduction of what pre-employment and transition services are. Okay,
absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, I work for Alabama Department of Rehab Services as the statewide transition coordinator. So what that is in a nutshell is providing technical assistance, guidance, and training to our VR counselors, our local education agencies, our community rehab partners, in informing and letting them know exactly what are pre-employment and transition services. So in order to qualify for pre-employment transition services, first, the student must be a student either 16 years old or ninth grade and have a disability. So the services are a coordinated set of services, and they're helping to better prepare our students with disabilities for post-secondary opportunities. They are, workplace readiness training, job exploration, work-based learning, instruction in self-advocacy, and counseling on enrollment opportunities for our transition programs, technical schools, and post-secondary education academic programs.
I feel like the self-advocacy training there is a really big part of that because it's something that the individual will take with them throughout life, learning able to speak for yourself and know what your rights are and what's available to you. Now, that training that you do with VR counselors, what does that look like? Are you traveling throughout the state and holding in-person meetings, or are you doing more Zooms nowadays or emails?
Right. Well, prior to the pandemic, we had a lot of training that went on throughout the state. I would travel, my partner, Tanya Frankham, Tina Dorch, we would travel around the state doing trainings. However, when the pandemic hit, There were strict restrictions that were put on, but we didn't think that the training needed to stop. We wanted to continue with that. So we have had a lot of training opportunities, virtual meetings, connecting with WinTAC, where they provided training as well. And, we have not had a lag in services, even though the pandemic hit. So it's great to be able to go out and have these conferences, our transition conference, APSI conference, so many that, are just so beneficial to staff and partners. But I'm happy to say that even though we've had the pandemic, training has not stopped.
That's awesome. And
virtual.
I know that APSI went virtual this past year, and I think they plan on being in person next year. I hope so, because we'd like to go and broadcast some of those breakout events that they do in individual rooms. And we always enjoy, I just like getting to meet people in person. I like being around people. Now that the trainings haven't kind of drawn back, they've continued, but do you notice that individuals that are receiving those services, have less people been looking for employment or pre-employment services during the pandemic?
Well, during the pandemic, we did have some barriers. And part of the barriers were basically accessing our students. We were very innovative, and our partners were very innovative with providing the service, changing their curriculum that was in person, modifying that to where it could be done virtually. So in connecting with our LEAs, our local education agencies, those students, we were able to work with them through their computers. Many of them did log in, but we had a good bit who didn't, and it was just because maybe they didn't have the internet band in their local locations. They may have been doing schoolwork, and when it was time for us to come in and provide the service, they were just mentally drained. So our preferred method is in-person services. However, those students that we could reach and, we were able to schedule and make contact with, we ensured that the services were still very beneficial to them.
Yeah, I've heard that the internet in rural areas of Alabama is a very tough challenge there. There are a lot of areas that when they log on to their online classrooms or try and get in meetings online, their bandwidth just can't handle it. And it's restricting, what they're able to do when we're kind of in that pandemic lockdown. And I've heard plans that, the state of Alabama is going to be pushing a lot of money into getting rural areas better internet over the next few years. And I'm looking forward to seeing that, because as long as you have an internet, a dial-up connection, you can get on. The world is at your fingertips. You just got to go looking for it and for the right people there.
Absolutely. And one thing that we found to be helpful in our rural areas, some of our schools had buses with hotspots, and they would go out there and the students were able to connect with their hotspots. Other areas, when we were able to schedule the meetings and internet, when we knew ahead of time that internet was an issue, our providers printed out the material, they had it mailed to them, and some of them just did like a large conference call. So they could go through all of the training material still in a group setting, and they had the hard copies of what they needed. So in person and virtual would have been better for interaction, but we still had an alternative method where they still received what they needed.
Yeah, it's a great idea to print off that material and then hold a bigger kind of conference call. I like that.
Yeah.
Very innovative. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen once again. I want you guys to follow along in this. So Mrs. Betts kind of gave us an introduction of what we're going to be talking here today. And then the next slide, if you would like to introduce this.
Okay, sure. Where it says Preeds and Transition Services, as I mentioned, that's a coordinated set of services and activities, and it's intended to better prepare our students with a disability for today's workforce. So every public high school in the state of Alabama has a transition counselor that comes out and works with our LEAs and our students in providing those transition services, scheduling them and providing them. So our goal is that in giving our students everything they need, just filling them with those Preeds activities, that when they are ready to exit their training program, whether that be high school, technical school, or college training, they're well equipped to enter the workforce.
Now, is that a one-to-one for the vocational rehab counselor? Is there one of those per school, or do they serve as kind of a district?
Well, vocational rehab transition counselors have more than one school. So each school has a counselor, but you may have a counselor that has 5 schools.
Mhm.
So the way that they coordinate their schedules with that is they visit their schools weekly. Our larger schools may require more than once a week visits, but some of our smaller schools maybe once a week. So yes, you may have a counselor that has 5 schools, you may have a counselor that has 8 schools, but the teacher will know that that is their liaison counselor for that specific school.
And when they go to visit the schools, what does that visit look like? Are they meeting with the teachers or directly with the students?
Both. They go in and it's a collaboration. So we have a team, if you will, and our team consists of our VR counselor, the student, the parent, sometimes the transition teacher, special education teacher, possibly the department head. And some of our schools have jointly funded transition specialists. So in one of the slides that's to come, we have an annual meeting called Transition Unlimited. And with our Transition Unlimited meeting, it's where everybody gets together and we go over transition updates, what's going on in the world of transition, and a plan is developed, which identifies which services our students will receive per grade. So once we have that action plan in place, then that lets the team come together and start to coordinate services for those students.
Mhm.
So when the counselor comes out to the school, they're meeting with the team, but they're also having in-person meetings with the student, either while pre-eds activities are being delivered, or once that student transitions into a vocational rehab caseload, meaning they're receiving more than just those pre-eds. At that point, the counselor is able to provide that good vocational guidance and counseling, many of the different transition services that we offer.
Now, as you progress, when you turn 16, as you progress through the school system, will you typically have one counselor there through those grades?
Yes. So for example, when a counselor comes in, we highly encourage our local education agencies to invite our counselors to the IEP meetings, because when they come out to the IEP meetings, they have a chance to meet the families and talk about what would be appropriate for their student. So that counselor is there and follows them throughout the duration of their high school career or active time.
It allows you guys to kind of grow as a team together there, to really get to know the individual, the family, their needs, what they want to do. You know, I feel like it's 16 is pretty young, and it's like, what do you want to do the rest of your life has always been a hard question. I remember taking a test in high school, like, what are you going to be good at? And it just felt like so much weight on your shoulders that you had to pick something. And I think it's really important that, you know, for students and young kids out there, you know, you can do a job for a few years, decide that maybe your skills line up better in another career or opportunity, and it's okay to change. I read this recent stat that, you know, like 50 years ago, you would stay with a company for 30, 40 years. Today, people are graduating college and they're sticking with a company for 3 to 5 years and then kind of going to a new job.
Right.
So don't get nervous that, you know, you might have your family saying, what do you want to do for the next 10 years? Take it slow and just explore your interests. Whatever you're interested in, kind of try it out. And I think ADRs does a very good job, you know, in lining up your skills and your interests with potential work opportunities there. And that comes from knowing the family and knowing the student.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And that's one of the beauties of pre-eds, because our students do take that career interest inventory, you know, that identifies their strength, not their strengths, but their interests. When we get into strengths, that's more of an aptitude test, but that initial right on, you know, taking that interest inventory, and then that can lead to job exploration to say, okay, well, I have interest in these areas. What careers line up? You know, what would I like to do? And then through that, they can explore, they can go on work-based tours, you know, where they visit different areas to see exactly what the day ins and day outs are of that job. So I think that that's great. Personally, myself, when I started college, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. We didn't have all of those opportunities in my high school when I was there. You know, you kind of knew what you knew. You saw your teachers, you saw your restaurant workers, you know, you saw law enforcement, police driving around, but we didn't have an opportunity to just explore the different careers so much to even know that maybe that is an interest. So that's one of the beauties of the pre-eds activities to me.
I feel like I'm still finding professions that I'm like, I didn't even know that existed. Like, yeah, it makes sense now that that is needed, from society, but I didn't know that existed.
Absolutely.
I'd like to acknowledge chat here. United Ability says we appreciate our partnership with ADRs, and our recent disability hiring expo could not have happened without them.
Oh, we love working with United Ability as well. They're involved in many of our programs. And I can tell you the partnership with our community rehab partners, especially United Ability, it's strong. And when we all work together, our consumers is who benefits. And I heard that training went very well. So I'm glad.
It was really cool. We got to broadcast live from there. And it was the people that you meet there were just, it was an amazing experience. And, we met some people that came up to our table and were like, hey, are you guys here as an employer? And we weren't necessarily there looking for new employees, but we met some people that are interested in the equipment. And so we're thinking about bringing some people on just to help out and get some experience with helping set up the equipment for our in-person broadcast. So if for any employer or individual looking for employment, these hiring expos are great to go to. And I've heard stories where they're getting hired on the spot the same day, or at least exchanging information and then reaching out and getting hired that week. So it is definitely, and we mentioned this yesterday, it is a great time to be looking for employment because employers are actively seeking great, team members.
Yes, for sure.
United Ability says, thank you for the kind words, Mrs. Betts.
Okay.
We're going to jump back to the PowerPoint presentation here.
Okay.
And if you would give us an overview of this slide.
Sure. When we talk about WIOA, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, what that was, it was amended. The WIOA Act, what it did, it ensured that state vocational rehab offices spent 15% of their federal dollars towards the implementation of Preeds activities. So while our VR counselors were always going into the schools and working with students and providing that vocational guidance and counseling and other services, with the implementation of WIOA, it allowed us to get into the schools earlier. So now, prior to a student being in a caseload, just them in itself being a student and having a disability, let us reach these students at an earlier point in their high school academic career. So as I mentioned, the 5 services that you see on there is what we're able to come in with Preeds and provide to the students.
Mm-hmm.
Find that it's very beneficial. We work with our providers and our teachers with coordinating a time, because we have found that in doing Preeds activities, it's better to do it in a group setting versus one-on-one. The feedback that the students get from each other and the engagement with our partners is just so great to do it in that group setting. Now, these services can be provided on an individual basis when needed, but the preferred method is in person and in group settings. So when you look at the 5 activities, you'll just see that this is something that not only students with disabilities need, but all students really. So our kids are really at an advantage that we are able now to reach them earlier. And we're at an advantage as well, because in reaching them earlier, that gives them the footing that they need to be successful in employment. And that's what we want. That's our goal.
Mm-hmm. And I wish I had these services in high school. I wish, everybody I knew had these services, because I feel like they're so beneficial. And so the increase in funding there with the what was the wording there?
WIOA. Well, actually, yes, it wasn't an increase in funding, but 15, because the vocational rehab receives federal funding as well as state funding, and 15% of the federal dollars that we receive are earmarked towards pre-employment transition services. Okay. So it's not additional money, it's just 15% of that budget from federal dollars.
Now, was it less before that act, you think, nationwide?
The funding?
Yeah, the 15%.
Well, with the implementation of WIOA, that's when that was kind of made to happen. Yeah, like before, services were going on, but it wasn't geared towards pre-employment when it comes to budget. Okay. So we really helped agencies out, I think, because with that 15%, it gave us the opportunity to focus so much time into investing into our students, making sure that they got these, where before we may not be able to reach them until 11th or 12th grade, depending upon when we got a referral from the school system. So
Yeah.
the funding may have been the same, but it let us reach our students sooner.
That makes sense. The earlier, the better.
Yes.
And I remember growing up, and I grew up on a farm, so we kind of had to work on the farm. But as soon as I was eligible, my dad had me working at the clinic. And it was almost like free labor for him. But, you know, he's like, you're getting meals. So you get that experience earlier, the better there.
Yes. And with some of our services, you know, exactly what you said is great. Getting those work-based learning opportunities in there, it helps our students to know what they like and even what they don't like.
Yep.
While developing those employment skills.
We're going to go back to this slide here, and we're going to look at a definition of who is eligible. And you've kind of hit this. Yeah, you've mentioned this earlier in our conversation here, but if you could just highlight some of the points again.
Sure, yes. A student with a disability, they must be an individual in either secondary or post-secondary recognized educational program. They cannot be younger than the age of transition. So that means 9th grade or 16. So if you have a 9th grader that's 15, they would be eligible just because they're in the 9th grade. But it's 16 to the age of 21. That's a student with a disability. So they have to have a disability, be between 16 and 21, and, you know, just need the services. Now, I will say that the Preeds, all students may not require all 5 services. So you may have a student that says, I absolutely do not want to go to college. I don't want to go to trade school. They get that job exploration, you know, just to ensure that, you know, what they want to do, what they're interested in. But you may have one who doesn't need the college prep experience. You may have a student that needs all 5 activities, and that's okay too. So the services are made available to all students with a disability, but they're based on the individual need.
It's kind of like a cafeteria style where you can pick and choose what you're going to put on your plate. And if you can also go back if you feel like you need another service later on down the line, you can go back and get that service. And if you're wondering if you're eligible, I think if you have an IEP plan or a 504 plan, you're almost automatically eligible for these services, right?
Yes, yes. Now we do have an application process. It's called a pre-application. So the student has a disability, they are a student. We have the application that can be completed by the LEA or involvement with the parent. And from that point, we're able to provide those services to our students.
Okay.
So yes, having a disability does make them eligible to receive pre-employment transition services.
And the application is just kind of onboarding them, getting that file up and ready from ADRs standpoint.
Yes, and it's basically just their name, you know, just some basic information so we can start working with them. And once they are at a point where they're able to transition into a VR caseload, that's when we start to look at eligibility, VR eligibility documentation.
I always get nervous whenever I'm filling out applications because it's like I got to go back and find all these files and I have no idea where they are. Birth certificates, you know, social security card.
Yeah. Well, now all that's not required with our Preeds. It's very simple. What grade are you in? What's your name? What high school do you go to? And then there's just some little check boxes as some things that they might be interested in, such as the job exploration, work-based learning, and things of that nature.
Well, speaking of some of those services, let's jump into one here and get a little bit more in depth.
Okay. Workplace readiness training. That's to develop those social skills and independent living skills. We call them soft skills. That's not necessarily the skills needed to get the job, but the skills needed to keep the job. So workplace readiness does involve some job seeking skills, but it's primarily those soft skills that our students need to know so they can keep the job. How to greet, how to engage with their coworkers and their employers, you know, showing up to work well-groomed, being on time, all of those things that are needed in the workplace that, you know, not the skills of the job, not those skills, but just work ethics, you know, being on time, greeting your customers, being a team player, being a leader when that's needed, you know, appropriate grooming and hygiene, all of those things right here.
I was just
that are listed. Yeah.
The way that I think about it when I read through these is like the first 30 seconds when you meet somebody, you want to make a good impression. You want to be clean. You want to smell good. You want to be on time. A lot of that is time management, transportation. So when I think of workplace readiness training, I think of everything that's into that first 30 seconds to a minute that you meet someone, or maybe you're serving them on the workplace, on site, and the things that go into that.
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it. And, you know, we've noticed that with our students, when they don't keep their jobs, when they do get fired, it's not always because they can't do the job, but it's because they lack these soft skills. So in giving them, you know, information and training on these soft skills, we hope that it improves job retention.
Well, it's really important, you know, kind of, I don't want to say grease the wheels, but to keep things flowing smooth. You know, you could be excellent, but if you're a mean person, you're not going to be wanted on the team.
Right.
You know, if you're a troublemaker on the team, nobody wants you around. But if you're, you know, you show up and you give it your best and you're cordial with everybody, everything's going to go pretty smooth.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that an employer is more willing to work with a student who has that good attitude, you know, positive vibes. So if they are maybe not getting the skills as quickly as they anticipated, you know, if they have those good soft skills, it just makes it so much better, where we know they've got that. So now let's work on this skill.
I like being around people that are positive and eager to learn, attracted to those people. So, you know, just think, who do you like to be around, and maybe mimic some of those soft skills as you mentioned.
Yes, for sure.
Let's jump into another service here.
Okay.
And we have job exploration counseling.
I love job exploration counseling. And, you know, I mentioned earlier, when I went to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I looked at the course catalog and I said, okay, which majors don't have a whole lot of math? Because I know I'm not that great at math. And that's kind of how I came up with a major. So now, you know, with job exploration counseling, I think it's just so important because it opens our students' eyes to what's out there, you know, in the world. What's the labor market? What's needed? And then based on their interest, you know, what will they like? We spend so much of our life going to work. So it's that much better when you're happy in what you do. And, you know, it doesn't even feel like work when it's something that you enjoy doing. So with job exploration, not only do they find out what they like, but they also find out what they don't like. You know, just because I'm good in math, I may not want to be an accountant. You know, just because I'm good at English, I may not want to go teach English at a high school or a university. So it really pairs their interest with.
I'm sorry, you still there, Mrs. Betts?
Future career opportunities. So explore different careers. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. I can hear you now. I apologize about that.
That's okay. That's okay. So with our job exploration, you know, it gives our students an opportunity to learn about local labor market information, looking at their interest in what jobs are in the community, also what jobs are in their state and in the nation. Nobody says you have to stay where you came up. So we have career speakers that come in and talk with our students. We recently purchased a platform called virtualjobshadow.com. That's a really cool platform. The students can watch videos of employers actually doing those jobs. So that's
cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. A lot of our providers come in and they do amazing jobs at going through the different careers through presentations that they put together of various different careers. So it just gives our students an opportunity to see what's out there and what they have interest in.
Well, I think you hit it on the head there. The students, you know, I remember back in high school, I didn't know what was available for a career or work opportunities. And that was just because I didn't have the experience. I wasn't walking into all these different industries. You know, I was in school. I was, you know, doing sports. I was doing homework, you know, and all these other things. And to get that knowledge out there, to kind of open, it's like you don't know what you don't know until you know.
Right.
And I saw this Venn diagram one time, and it said when you go into your work, and you mentioned that you want to be happy because you spend a decent amount of your life and your day, you know, providing that service, is you want to pick an area. The one Venn diagram was like, what are you good at? And then another one was, what are you interested in? And then the other one was, what's going to pay you? And so you have to get in the middle of those three things. And hopefully, you know, those 6 to 8 hours a day will will be very enjoyable for you.
For sure.
So here we have a few examples that you kind of mentioned. Speakers will come in, you'll discuss the labor market, discussion of non-traditional jobs, instructor-led discussions on what's available. And these are mostly in person, correct?
Yes, they are. Mainly in classroom settings. Now with our career interest inventory, sometimes and many times those are done individually because our provider will talk with the student one-on-one and go through a series of questions. There's times that those can be done in groups based on the inventory. The student will have the inventory, whether it be on a computer or a paper copy, and our provider will facilitate that with them. But when it comes time to the feedback sessions, after everything is correlated, all their scores, they sit down with our student and they go through that report in detail. They tell them what areas they scored in highest, some first, second, and third choices based on interest, what would be some good career matches. So the majority of them, as I've said, are done in group settings, but when we get to that career interest inventory, that's done a little differently because it needs to be in smaller groups and the feedback primarily individual so that student gets a good feel of them. At that point, it's all about them.
Now, when you mentioned skills there, what they're good at, are the students taking like a multiple choice test there?
My light went off, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. That's a great light there. It's an energy saver. So if you're not in the room, the light's not always going to be on.
Right.
We were down in Tuscaloosa and that was going on in our background yesterday, but I love the motion sensing on it.
Yes. Well, now when I say skills, when they get to their skills, that's more of an aptitude. That's what we would consider a VR service. So I might have said skills and error, but their interests, their ethics, things that they like and good matches based on those interests. Okay. But yeah, once we get to the part of skills, when they're a VR consumer, that's an assessment that is just as important because at that time, that assessment matches up their aptitude with their interests. So they get the full picture at that point, kind of like you said with your diagram.
Yeah. So now that we know what the interests are, we want to get some work-based learning opportunities.
Yes. Now, work-based learning is an area that I personally would like to see grow so much. To me, work-based learning is so important because it gives the students an opportunity to pair what they've learned in school, what they've learned through other pre-ETS activities, and have that good hands-on training. So we've taught you the skills, the soft skills that are needed to be a good employee. We've talked to you about some of your interests. So now let's try out work. And this slide here shows the unpaid and paid work experiences. Gives our students an opportunity to go out into the community and actually work at some of these companies, which is a great thing. They learn hands-on. Do I have good customer service skills? I know I've learned all about being a team player, but am I truly, that team player? So it lets them have a trial at employment. We have student-led enterprises, so for some of our students in very, very rural areas where some of our local businesses are unable to do work-based learning opportunities for our students during the school day, we have student-led enterprises. And those are really great too, because that's where there's an actual business within the school. So our students let's just use an example of a coffee shop. Yeah. Some of our schools have coffee shops, and our students with a disability are responsible for keeping inventory, stocking the shelves, taking orders, taking payments, providing the service. When things are low, they have to order more supplies. So they are actually running a business within the school. So as they graduate, they've already developed some of those skills.
Yeah, and I love that real life experience, because if you read something or you read a book, you might understand it on paper, but until you do it, you have to actually feel it. And I always go back to Shaun White as a snowboarder, a gold medalist in the Olympics. And I can tell you what a 1080 is. And it's, where you go in circles or do flips on a snowboard, but there's no way that I can do a 1080. And the only way to know that is to get out there and try. And when I was younger, I did try and I hurt myself on a snowboard. It's like, yeah, that future is not for me. That's not going to happen.
I totally understand. I do. And you have a better appreciation, once you're in that situation, you really do. As you said, our students say, oh yeah, I know how to get back from break on time, but we've learned through some of our work-based learning opportunities, set your watch, set your phone, because you were 5 minutes late coming back from lunch, and that's important. Someone's waiting on you to get back so they can take that lunch. So you're right, that tangible experience is so beneficial.
Yeah, and you really have to feel that cause and effect there. Now, other examples of work-based opportunities in the school, would that be like concession stands at football games?
Well, no, because concession stands at football games, we do have our students who they volunteer. That would be a great volunteer experience because they are still doing those skills with selling and customer service and taking payments and things of that nature. But when we look at our student-led enterprises, we want for them to get the whole gamut of what's involved with ordering the supplies, on a daily basis. Our student-led, normally our students will meet in those daily. Okay. So that's their job. They have a schedule. They work maybe 2 blocks during the day, and that's their job. They have assigned tasks. Where during concession stand, that's an amazing volunteer opportunity,
but you don't get the behind the scenes, like you said there. You don't get the ordering of the thing and the full experience. But who oversees that operation normally in the schools?
The teacher. There's an assigned teacher, and that teacher is the overseer. They manage the students. There's also student mentors that participate because our student-led enterprises are integrated. It's not just completely all students with a disability. So we have some of our seniors who may need some volunteer hours. Our future business students, they'll come in and they'll work with the students with a disability. So because it is integrated, their main supervisor is the teacher. However, they still have that support of other students who may have experience within that.
I love that it's integrated because you might have some people, like you said, that are interested in entrepreneurship. And want to learn of that, and the inclusion that it brings together, working together.
Yes.
I love that it's integrated and kind of overseen by a teacher to make sure things go smooth.
Yes.
I'm going to pull up the presentation again, and we're going to talk about counseling on opportunities for enrollment here.
Okay.
If my computer would click. There we go.
Okay, yes. Now, this is another one of our Preeds activities, and this is a really good one for our students who have aspirations to continue their training beyond high school. So they gain awareness of the wide range of careers and options and what it entails. So our students who engage in this Preeds activity, they can go on college tours. They have instruction on how to complete an application, a college application, how to read a course catalog to know how you need to set up your schedule. Our students learn about not just the academic part, but some other fun things that are on college campuses, such as maybe Greek life, athletics, jobs, workplace. They have work studies is what they call it. So with this service, they have an introduction into college. How important is it to try to score as high as you can on the ACT? What's required to become a welder? Time management. Mom's not going to be there to wake you up so you're on time for class. Mom's not going to be here to tell you, did you take your medicine today? So it just gets them ready for life ahead. Majors, like I said, registering for classes, financial aid. Are they going to be able to manage a part-time job and be a college student? So that activity is primarily geared for our students who have those aspirations to go beyond high school.
That is
for that.
That is quite a bit to navigate. I remember that being very tricky. The course catalog, I think, was this thick. Yes. And you're going through and trying to check that the schedule is going to work out. Is this? And then I always got so nervous that I was going to enroll in a course that I didn't need. And then I'd have to take another course and it would prolong my stay at college.
Yes, yes.
And the finance, what was it, FAFSA?
Yes, they know all about FAFSA. But I will say this, students at this point, and that's one reason why it's so important, like our students learn how to advocate for themselves within the college prep, because so many of our students can make their schedules before the other students can. That's a major benefit.
So you're guaranteed to get into the classes, basically.
Pretty much, yes, yes, because when they register for those accommodations, whatever accommodation is on there, by right, they're able to have that. I can remember getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning, so I'd be one of the first ones in line to get my classes. So now our students, they have that priority registration. Some of them do online. Technology has just really helped in so many areas.
Yeah, you don't have to camp out in front of the building anymore.
To get your classes, exactly. So they learn all about that during that activity.
That's really cool that they kind of get a pre-enrollment there. And I imagine that, if I were teaching a student that was going to go through that transition, I would want to link them up with the school's organization on campus that could help them in case they had further questions. And I'm sure that every school does have that. Those services that are available, but I feel like that would be a major link that I would want them to get very familiar with.
For sure. Student support services, they come out and they talk with our students as well. And across our state, we have a summer college prep program, and our students actually get to try to be college students for that week, where they're on that local college campus. They see where the student support services office is. So even if they don't go to that school, they know how it works and they know what to do for whichever school they're going to. They have an opportunity to sit in a college professor's lecture, go to a writing lab, the computer lab. So, just that introduction, I think, eases their nerves when they start at college. And it just sets them up for success because they know what to expect.
Yeah, and that first college course, it's not necessarily going to be one-on-one. You're going to be in a hall, and there might be 100 people in there with you.
Yes, yes.
Now, you did mention that one of the most important aspects of this whole process is being able to advocate for yourself. And I agree with you because those skills will go with you throughout life. So if you'd like to talk about self-advocacy a little bit.
Sure. Our instruction in self-advocacy, what that does, that activity, it enhances the student's ability to effectively communicate, negotiate, talk about what their desires and what their needs are, and the appropriate way to communicate this. We find so many times that with our high school students, already, they're high school students. They may not have had that opportunity to advocate for themselves, or they're not comfortable with it because mom and dad stepped in and, pretty much made everything happen for them. So the instruction in self-advocacy is so important because they learn how to lead their own IEP meeting. What are their strengths? What are their challenge areas? How can we overcome this? How to request those accommodations in college, because when they go to college, they're not going to have an IEP. They have to request those accommodations. Our students who aren't going to college, how do they request accommodations on their job? They learn how to talk about their disability, and if it's appropriate, when to disclose it, if to disclose their disability, their rights, learning leadership skills. We have a really cool program called Youth Leadership Forum, also known as YLF. We partner with ATLI, which is Auburn Transition Leadership Institute, Troy University, and just other entities, and what the governor's office. And what we do then is we have a group of students who get to come out and they stay on Troy campus. They learn leadership skills. They learn self-advocation. They build bonds that are pretty much lifetime bonds. And when they're finished, they learn about their rights. They can speak up for themselves in a positive way. They are leaders in our community. So that self-advocacy is just very important because it also improves confidence.
Yeah.
Which is great. They learn that they're not to focus on the disability, but the ability. Even though someone may have a disability, there's accommodations that's put in place to where it's not seen as a disability, and they're still just as successful, if not more.
We were talking a little bit about that yesterday with being on a team. And if the team is struggling coming up with a solution, sometimes there are individuals on that team who have gone through specific challenges and barriers and have overcome them. And through that critical thinking that they've learned, they're able to look at some of the problems in a different way and come up with new and unique solutions there. So being able to bring in that other way of thinking and looking, I think, is very beneficial. And I love that you're hitting on the head, knowing your rights. because like the ADA, I haven't read through, you know, the laws and the acts. I feel like I should, and I feel like it should be required training for each individual that those that they're providing services for, the ADA and the people that help them, the services as well. But to have an understanding of that, we just had McCartney Hagar do a broadcast, I think it was last week, or maybe this is, of breaking down the Brittany Act, which was about Britney Spears and guardianship. And so just being aware of what rights are out there, I think is really important. And you mentioned the self-advocacy. A lot of times that, you know, students and kids will sometimes, I'll notice it when they'll say something, but then they'll look over to their mom or dad and be like, was that the right thing to say there? And so kind of transit. And I think we all go through that, whether, you know, we always look to our parents when we were younger for, was that the right thing? But gaining confidence and being able to, you know, be with your doctor without having to have, you know, anybody there to support your decisions and what you want. And you have a few examples here that I think are really good.
Okay.
So,
Please. I'm
please.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to let you take it over.
Okay, that's okay. You're good. You're good. I was just going to say that Engage Alabama app is really good because that helped our students with it provided them a guide to lead their IEP meeting. So I don't know if all schools have implemented it, but in the schools that I have seen it, it's really great because the student leads their own IEP meeting. That's so good because it gives them the opportunity to know about their disability, what they need, and their strengths. So I really, really, really like that. That's a good step into them learning that self-advocacy. And when we talked about the YLF, what you mentioned, how students who or just people, period, who've been through things can come back and guide. With YLF, our students who've gone through that and done well, they're able to come back as mentors the next year.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's really an encouragement to our new delegates, you know, because they look and they're going through the process, and they're learning so much. And because they have a lot of fun, even though they're learning, they really don't know they're learning because they have so much fun while they're doing it. And to me, it's really encouraging that they know that next year, this can be me. I can be this mentor. So, you know, self-advocacy is just super important. I
love the learning. When you're having fun, it reminds me of getting a workout in, but playing a sport.
Yes.
It's way more fun. And you're at the end, you're like, I don't want to go lift weights, but I'll go play hockey. It's like, I did it.
There you go. Yep, absolutely.
So we have a few examples here of the different types of services. Just to name a few, if you'd like to bullet point those.
Sure. Now, these services that are listed here, those are the services that go beyond pre-employment transition services. So when we mentioned at first, to get the pre-ed services, you have to be a student and you have to have a disability. Well, the services that you see listed here are considered transition services. The assistive technology and accommodation, financial assistance, vocational needs assessment. That's what we talked about, testing the aptitude, guidance and counseling, driver's training, permit training, job placement assistance, supported employment, all kind of, just an array of services. But for these, the student or the individual must be in a VR caseload. And what that means is they have to have a documented disability and they need to require ADRs services to gain employment. So it's a step on top of the pre-eds. And with that, it just opens the door for them having so many more services to help them with job placement, follow-up services. You know, so once we've determined our students eligible, then at that point, a VR counselor can sit down and talk with them about some vocational goals. What is it that you want to be career-wise? What steps do we need to take to prepare you for that? So you have those soft skills, you have that work-based learning experience. We've gone through the self-advocacy. Now let's look at what we need. Do you need assistive technology? Do you need a work experience? You know, job placement assistance. What actual skills do you need? Training. You know, some of our students may qualify for financial assistance. So if they get that amazing job, they completed welding training and they may need a welding shield and the boots and things like that, VR can come and help them with that based on financial need and eligibility. So it's very advantageous for our students to go beyond pre-eds into a VR caseload, because it just opens up so many more doors in helping them reach their goal.
Yeah, and it sounds like when we're talking about it, the pre-services are kind of getting the ball rolling, getting the ideas out there, learning some skills, and then the other services after that are fine-tuning it and kind of nailing it down what exactly you need. But we're going back to that other slide, that 15% that came out in 2014, allowing you to reach the students at an earlier age just gets them ready for that part of fine-tuning it. So you've already got an extra few years of them getting the ball rolling, which is really cool. Now, how do students receive these services?
The way that the students receive the service, as this slide says, is absolutely collaboration. Once our students have been referred to us for pre-employment transition services, like you said, that just gets the ball rolling. But for them to move into a VR caseload, we have to get that documentation to help us with determining eligibility. So we'd sit down and meet with the student, with the parent, talk about services that vocational rehab can offer them. And then we develop what's called a plan, an individual plan for employment. So that's done with the student and with the VR counselor. And that's just that's like the meat of the service. Sitting down, identifying all of those required services, linking our students with our partners, so they receive those services to get them their jobs ultimately, and not just a job, but a career, because we want for them to reach their maximum potential, not just a job. Sometimes we know we have to have that job first, which is what we hope happens in work-based learning. So we're preparing them to start working on their vocational goal, and being in satisfying employment. So the way that all of this gets started is with Transition Unlimited. And that's when I mentioned that we have the group that comes together. And during that time, we learn about transition updates. We work together as a team. We collaborate. We look at our students per grades and what pre-eds activities they need. And then the students who require VR services in addition to pre-eds, that's when we start to filter them into a caseload so they can get those individualized services based on their needs.
I love this slide right here because it's acknowledging everybody around that individual.
Yes. And it takes all of those to make it happen.
Yeah. It can be kind of tricky when you have a whole team like that to get together and have a common goal, but I feel like it becomes a lot easier when it's up to the individual and they have that self-advocacy to speak up for themselves, because they're leading that conversation. And directing where that team is heading. And I think it's important that they know they're the leader of that team, and everybody buys into their vision and helps that vision become real.
Right. And I'll say this, with the partners that was just listed, you're right. They are the leader of that group 100%. But how great is it to know that you have all of these partners working on behalf of that one person, to make sure that they're in a job that they like and they have all the tools that's needed to be successful. So I like to think of it as how they used to say it takes a village. Well, this village is just for, that individual with a disability. So all those extra supports, are just wonderful.
Yeah. And that gives confidence to the individual that they have those supports and that, they can move forward with what they want to. As we kind of wrap up here, I would like to ask, is there a success story that comes to mind of somebody, a student going through these services that pops up?
Oh, yeah, my goodness. We have so many. We have so many, and it just really, really joys our heart. But I'll tell you, I had one student, and I met him early on in my career. He stayed with us, for a good little while. And it just seemed like if something was going to happen, it was going to happen to him. He had a disability. Actually, he had 2 disabilities. We worked with him. We provided him the vocational guidance and counseling. He didn't have a very strong support system at home. So when we started the IEP meetings, we really encouraged his mom to come. She started coming to the IEP meetings. He started, being more involved. He actually led his IEP meeting. He got in Future Business, it's the Future Business Leaders of America, Future Business Leaders of America. Got into it and loved it. So where he struggled before, we got him a psychological, found out where his strengths and weaknesses were. So that geared us towards what would be a good major for him based on his interests and his abilities. He went on to college. He got a degree in fashion merchandising. He's now living in New York. He has his own company. He is extremely successful. He's making well into the six figures. And this was a student who started off, who did not have that support system, didn't know what he wanted to do. His mom was doing the best she could, but once he got involved with vocational rehab and found out his interest in that, I can maximize on my ability and not my disability, and he soared. And when I tell you, that young man still calls me today, and it just joys my heart to hear his voice on the phone and see how good he's still doing and out there living his dreams.
That is an amazing story. And I want to call him today and say, hey, do you want to do a broadcast on your story and highlight your company?
I hear you. That's a great idea. We can make that happen.
I would love to. I'd love to know more about what he's doing in New York. It always seemed like a little too busy a place for me, but I'd love to hear how everything's going there. And if you'd like to comment on some of the services that you've been able to provide in ADRS, that'd be awesome.
Well, I will make sure to reach out to him today.
Yeah, please do. And include me in the email, and I'll see if he's interested.
Sounds great.
As we come to a close here, I am going to put up the final slide here. So if anybody has any further questions, they can go ahead and, you're comfortable with me putting up this slide now that it's out there?
Absolutely. Yes. Transition needs. I'm here. Like I said, I work with Tanya Frankham. She's one of our transition specialists in the state. She is very knowledgeable of transition as well. So you have a team. So if you can't get me, we'll make sure you get you linked up with her as well. And we're just here for your transition needs.
Well, Mrs. Betts, thank you again for sharing the morning with us. And please include me in that communication. And I'm going to put that contact information in the comments so people can go ahead and click on that from the Facebook page.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking with you.
All right, Mrs. Betts, I'm going to go ahead and wave at the camera, and I'll see you later.